All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the third annual mock draft hosted here. We're going to get going. This is Padraic Pierce. I'm Roberto Mahoney. We're going to be joined by a man who knows the Eagles better than they know themselves. This guy literally called the entire draft last year. And specifically, he knew about a couple of Georgia players. But in that light, we've got Georgia Sports Illustrated writer, the fan man himself, Brooks Austin. What's up, man?
How are you guys?
Doing good. Glad to have you.
Yeah, man, no doubt. Good to be here.
So I've highlighted some Georgia players, and no one knows this team better than you do. So I was hoping maybe you can give us some insight before we get going on this. And, maybe a diamond in the rough, one player that's not on this list. That should be.
Yeah, let's run them off. Well, I guess we'll go by in the order in which you got. Is this your mock draft? Is this how you see these players? How you got this going on?
So what I've created, we basically create a value-based draft system where we look at a bunch of big boards, combine values as they're seen by Pro Football Focus, ESPN, Pro Football Network, CBS, Draft Countdown, and Daniel Jeremiah with NFL, and create an aggregate and try to find a hole, find value. Where are teams looking that they might get a little bit extra value here or there?
You know what? I'm looking at it right now. Of all of this, I'm in pretty standard agreement with all this as someone who watches all these football players. Like the one that really makes me believe this is true, okay, or that this is holding true to something that is actually realistic, that should be realistic, is the Nolan Smith evaluation. What's that say? 21 down there?
Yeah.
I've heard some folks talking about him like creeping into the top 10, top 12, top 15. That is way, way too rich for someone who watched Nolan Smith for 4 years. I watched that guy play football for 4 years. I don't think he's a top 15 player. I think he's a top 40 player that tested like a top 15 player, which means he's going to be drafted right around 20, 25. To be a top 10 ranked edge rusher for me, guys, for any NFL evaluator, for someone to pay that's a 15 to 18 million dollar pick, right? For someone to put that much money in an edge rusher that's 6'2" 3/4, 235 pounds, that's not normal. They don't typically do that. Typically, those top 15 picks are like real long rangy guys. It's part of the reason why Trayvon Walker was the #1 overall pick last year. Traits over tape type of deal. So I love this pick right here, looking at this kind of evaluation of Nolan Smith, looking at it right off the rip with him right there at 21. Again, I think he's like 25 to 32 in this draft or any draft. I think he's that high quality of a football player, but don't get crazy with that like top 10 stuff. I think that's a little outrageous, a little rich. As far as Jalen Carter goes, man, like this would be 1.1, right, in most drafts without some of the questions and without some of the concerns. And I'll be honest, like, I don't really do the character concern questions. That's not my bag. My thing is tape, right? I'm the film guy. So, like, I can show you tape of Jalen not really trying all the time. You know what I mean? Like, he has this really, really high ceiling on 3rd and 5 when you need him most. What you're going to pay him to do in the NFL. He's great at that, but, like, on 1st and 10 every once in a while, he might let his gap slip or he might, take a play off. I mean, it's natural for him to do such a thing. So, I see why guys have the touch and go evaluation on him, but if you can get him in line, if you can get him to play his best football, like I thought he did the last 5 games of his career, man, he is 1-1. He is the best football player in this draft. So yeah, that 5 range, I'm good with that. I understand why some you got Paris Johnson up there ahead of and the kid from Northwestern, the 2 tackles, Skronsky over Padraic Jones. And I can understand how some like offensive line gurus and some pro guys can see that. The Northwestern kid's as clean as they come. Like he's what we call a ground rule double in the scouting industry. You're going to hit that ball hard. It's going to go into the gap, bounce over the fence. It may not be a grand slam. It may not get the crowd pumping, but it's going to be a nice, solid hit. Whereas Padraic Jones could be the home run. I think Padraic Jones is a 12-year and like 10-year All-Pro, Pro Bowl type football player. That guy is just like barely scratching the surface of what he's going to be as a football player. And I saw him when he was 17 years old in Lithonia High School in DeKalb County, Georgia, here just right down the road from us now. And he looked like a baby and didn't really know, like a baby deer, but the most athletic baby deer you've ever seen.
Yeah.
That's what he looked like. And that was just 3 years ago. I mean, it's insane to me how, like, what this dude's become already in just like 3.5 years of like real football and real coaching is what he's just now getting. So that dude's only going to get better. The Darnell Washington thing is really, really interesting, okay? It's very interesting for this reason. Like a quarter of the NFL now, maybe a third of those jokers are running some type of Shanahan, McVay, twist off, spin off. Like I'm a quarterback under center. We're a stretch zone team that plays out of 12 personnel, right? Two tight ends on the field, one attached. Well, by God, you need a Darnell Washington. Like that's what you need. So like it makes sense why teams are going to highly covet such a human being. I'm not so keen on his ability to like separate, but if you've got a great like quarterback, if you've got a guy who's like a tight window thrower and just needs a big body target, this is your dude. I think his passing traits and passing abilities are only going to increase in pro ball because every window's tight. In college, he's playing with quarterbacks that they're looking for space. They're looking for the guys that are already separating, and they get the ball out of their hands quick. Whereas in the NFL, there ain't a ton of separation anyways. You really separate with the ball placement, okay? And that's what the quarterback's job is. So you'll see his evaluation continue to go up. The Keely Ringo is very, very interesting from a traits versus tape standpoint as well. He's the inverse of Nolan. That's a 6'2", 205-pound corner that ran 4.41 at the NFL Combine, I believe it was, maybe faster, 4.38, something like that. Okay, that is a really, really fast, like 10.3 in the 100-meter track kid, like coming out of high school. 5-star corner. As when he was coming out of high school, I compared him to Patrick Peterson. Wow. The only problem is he has really, really tight hips. Not extremely tight hips, but tight hips. So his ability to turn and stop and go and all that good stuff, those are problems. But if you're like a cover 3 football team, if you're a really zone-heavy football team, that's going to be a really, really coveted draft pick. So his evaluation is going to be touch and go. He might be like 42nd on draft boards for teams who are mainly man-man teams, right? Man covers football teams. Whereas he might be a top 20 evaluation for a team that's a cover 3 based football team. So it's going to be really, really interesting there. There you go.
That's sick. You got them all. I was going to offer up some questions. So as far as like upside, downside, what's the floor and the ceiling? So it sounds like you see some like Jason Peters and Broderick Jones. Like you see this guy being a staple for.
So yeah, for sure. But like Jason Peters is an interesting comp because like Jason's known for his athleticism. Like he is really, really elite with his feet, but carries a ton of weight in his midsection, always has. Broderick is a hooper. Like he looks like a power forward, guys. He's 6'5". He's like 295 pounds. He's gonna play at 305 come fall, and just super, super athletic. So if you're like an Atlanta Falcons, I don't think you draft a tackle like this because this is not a ground and pound tackle. This is a modern offensive tackle. This is a modern athlete playing the position. This is not like some grounder. You know what I mean? Some grinder.
Could he pull? Like, do you think that they might use him?
I mean, Georgia kind of like manipulated their offense in a sense where they would like, try to run him into the boundary to block corners and try to run him into the boundary to block safeties and do things like this where he's blocking smaller people because he's such a great athlete in space, 100%. He kind of, honestly, he's very Panay Sewell in the sense where he revamps your offense in the sense that we get to now do different things in the run scheme because Broderick's such a great athlete.
That's sick. Padraic, do you have questions about the Bulldogs?
Yeah, so, player I'm really curious about is Nolan Smith. So I'm just looking at a couple of things. So, he's he's rusher is my understanding, but hasn't had more than 3.5 sacks in a season. A little bit undersized, but sub 4.4 in the 40s. I mean, a lot of that is could he be like? Do they see him as like a Hassan Reddick, guy who can drop into coverage and also rush? Is like projection? Is that kind of where his value is?
A lot of teams are getting that Hassan Reddick type vibe, and then the other name I heard recently was Micah Parsons.
Micah Parsons, yeah.
And I think that can be hot. It can be a new hot topic, right? A new hot term. It's like when Burrow came out in 19. Now all of a sudden every non-elite trait quarterback is suddenly Joe Burrow, and it's like no. Just because Joe Burrow gets it done doesn't mean everybody can do it that way. Mm-hmm. I think the same could be said about Micah Parsons, and the same could be said about Hassan Reddick. That's Hassan Reddick's second team. It took two teams for teams to figure out what to do with him and how to play him. You know what I mean? So like, these aren't always hits right off the bat. He aspires to be Von Miller, and here's the thing about Nolan for me. I was flabbergasted to see him test like that. I've studied tape on that guy for years. It never showed up like that. You know what I mean? Like 4.39, guys.
That's
on
fast.
Tape, on tape, 4.39 should look like holy shit. And I don't know if we can cuss on that. Every time he turns on the tape, it should go wow. It never did that for me with Nolan. It was just, hey, he's a great football player. He's in the right spot at the right time all the time. So my thing for Nolan would be like if I were drafting I would have to be a team that needs we're one play away. We're one player away from winning a Super Bowl, or we're one player, like solid starter away from us getting past that divisional round and into the conference title game type deal.
You know who that reminds me of?
Because Team CM is just the guy.
Go ahead, Bud.
Just as if Team CM is more of a situational pass rusher, if he's not going to be playing much off-ball linebacker and he's not really going to be stout against the run.
And that's the weird thing for me. He's really stout against the run though. When you watch the tape, he's like 235 pounds stuffing SEC guards. I mean, breaking their face mask. Like he is a man in the trenches, and he's physical, and he will always be in the right spot in the run game. And that's what run game is about: effort, pad level, being in the right spot, being in the right gap. The situational pass rush, like stab and evaluation, that type of football player for Nolan, for me, is the one that really makes me scratch my head. Like he does not have a pass rush skill set. It's not there. Like you can look at it on tape. When they gave him his one-on-ones, it wasn't like he was beating the hell out of guys. Go look at his limited sack numbers are limited because he comes from Georgia. They don't prioritize sacks. It's not what they do.
They just get him.
When he got opportunities. Even when he got opportunities, it wasn't like he was out here kicking everybody's butt on the edge with moves and twitch and speed and nothing like that. This is not Azeez Ojulari. Azeez Ojulari came out of Georgia, and that dude was day one, 9 sacks in the league if he stays healthy. That is not Nolan Smith. Nolan Smith is day one going to give you 100% grade and efficiency in the run game and in his coverage duties, and we're going to have to figure out whether or not he can rush the passer.
So you know what that sounds like to me is the past 5 years it's become very popular, the money backer position, the Telvin Smith, Deion Jones type. Could he be as good as Telvin Smith?
It was so interesting. I always wanted him to stand up. I wanted him to stand up, get off ball, like really like separate. Like Georgia played him at a jack where he's like standing up, playing in a wide nine, basically an edge. Like that's what he is. He's playing edge position. Small guy at Georgia. I want him to play like what you're talking about, like extended hybrid money and rush from distance and like play, some coverage, because he is a 4.31 athlete and he does have long arms and he can cloud passing lanes and do things like that. It's just in years past, like I said, he was playing more of like a stand-up 7 and he was just playing defensive end essentially. And what most people look on the field and they go, oh, that guy's playing D end. When really he's playing outside linebacker, but he's really not,
Yeah, I get you. That's great info. I love it on these 5 guys. Not as much as last year, but who's one guy? Who's the George Pickens? You told me that he might be the most talented guy that no one's talking about because of character issues that maybe didn't even really exist. And that guy balled out from day one. Who's not on this list that could be?
So they're 2 guys that are really boring. Okay, they don't talk a lot. They don't do a lot. One of them, and they're not on your list at all. I guarantee it. One of them is Warren McClendon. Okay, I think Warren's going to be like a 3rd to 5th round tackle prospect. That's what he's going to get drafted at because he is no traits. Like he is very slow. He has, no twitch. He's not like this massive human being. He doesn't walk up on you and make you say, oh shit. He's not one of these guys. Like it's not that. So he's going to get drafted as such. But I'm going to tell you what, he rarely ever got beat. Okay, playing right tackle in the SEC he was a 3-year starter. Okay, and he's got reps against all of them. Got reps against Hutchinson. He's got reps against Ajabo from Michigan a couple years ago. He got reps against Will Anderson. I think he's given up like 1 career sack, okay, against all of those guys, all right? So he did his job and did his job well in the SEC. That's a guy that always translates. Like when you're just you can check the box, he's going to do his job guy in the SEC at the offensive line position, the guy's going to play in the league. I don't know however long his body holds up, he's going to play for a while. And then the other one's Christopher Smith. Christopher Smith is the best safety in this class. He's just 5'10", 185 pounds. Like, it sucks that he's that small. It is what it is. Turn on the tape. He's the most physical one. Like, that dude strikes. That dude comes downhill and he pops. And the great thing about Chris is that he's a former 4-star corner coming out of high school, played traditional man-man corner at Hayfield Charter here in Atlanta. So, like, he is a traditional corner by nature. He'll play in the nickel somewhere. He'll play nickel corner somewhere in the league. You know, like off the top of my head, maybe like the Los Angeles Chargers. Wink, wink. That might happen, right? So he might end up there playing nickel, something like that. A little inside scoop for you. I know you like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's sick. All right. Well, I mean, thanks for joining us, Brooks. It was a pleasure.
Yeah,
I mean, the
good.
insights, these are incredible. All right, so without further ado, I guess we should get on it. As we mentioned before, what we did is a compiled aggregate list of some of the top big boards, at least the most circulated ones. And we've got Pro Football Focus, ESPN, Pro Football Network, CBS, Draft Countdown, Daniel Jeremiah. And then we create this system, and you'll see that I have different tiers right here. This is just to help us organize, players that might be a tier above or below. And generally, someone from like this position, this might be a little bit of a reach if they're on this, going down 2 tiers. But if the need is exactly right and it fits exactly what they're doing, then we're definitely going to pull the trigger on that. So, Padraic, you ready to go?
Ready.
All right, you're going to be handling the AFC. I will be doing the NFC. Number 1 pick, I don't think it's going to be any surprise because they traded away everything to get it. It's going to be Bryce Young, QB. I think he's got everything, the intangibles. I don't care about his height. He's had 2 batted passes in a Heisman and a half campaign, plus some. The guy can ball out, and he seems to be a great leader. He's got everything. I think this is why they went up. If I'm the Panthers, I'm moving up to get Bryce Young. The only problem is, personally, I don't know if he's going to be a huge fit with the head coach that they've picked up, but we'll see. We'll see. I hope for the best for this guy. All right, the Texans.
So word has been for the whole process, people have talked about it being Young and C.J. Stroud going 1 and 2, but recently the word has been that the Texans won't necessarily take a quarterback, and then also I think something that's come up recently that could actually, I think, really have a dramatic effect on C.J. Stroud this year is it's the, I think, C2 test that people are talking about, where he scored abysmal in terms of processing. And, sort of like, talking about the year that Laramie Tunsil was supposed to be a top pick, and then, something right before the draft, and then he started to fall. Teams didn't know what to do. So I don't know. I mean, C.J. Stroud might...
He had the bong. He had the bong cloud mask. He had the gas mask.
That's what it was. That's right. So C.J. Stroud, obviously, it's not like his own fault, but I don't know if you know about this. If you've read about this test, but Bryce Young, Will Levis scored really well. So did Anthony Richardson. I'm talking about a on the field cognition test, not like an intellectual test like the Wonderlic. Anyway, so C.J. Stroud was like, I forget, very low percentile, and I think that could actually have a significant effect. But long story short, I think the Texans. They're going to want to trade out. They obviously have a ton of needs. I think throughout the process, Will Anderson has been the name that's been kind of the consensus top overall pick. I have concerns about that. I mean, watching him play against Tennessee, getting shut down by Darnell Wright. It seems like I just wonder if he's has the upside to be a player to be picked in this position. So I'm gonna pick Jalen Carter here. So I think they got their cornerback last year, and then D'Amico Ryans. I think he's gonna want to kind of build a defensive identity, and I think this class, very few interior rushers. I think you look at the last 2 Super Bowls. The story of the defense for the winning team. Would have been Chris Jones of the Chiefs and Aaron Donald the year before.
It's true.
These guys are being able to break the game. So I think that the direction I think they should go. I don't know if they will, but I think that's what they should do.
Yeah, and you know what? I should edit out, or I should point out that normally we go through and we cut out the outliers, so top and bottom. And if it weren't for this pesky old 16 here, Jalen Carter would be ahead of Bryce Young on the talent board, and like Brooks said, he could be 1.1 any given year. So this guy's ready to go, and it could be an instant producer for them. All right, the Cardinals. are up, and I think they want to get out of this pick, honestly. And we're not really going to do trades, but we'll talk about what trades might look like, who might be looking to move up and down. Padraic, is there anyone that you have in the AFC moving up to 3?
Yeah, I mean, so, a lot of people are connecting the Colts to a quarterback. CJ Stroud's still on the board here. They've been connected to Will Levis and actually Anthony Richardson. I mean, talk about Shane Steichen, if I'm pronouncing his last name. Everybody wants to put Anthony Richardson with them because of, the Jalen Hurts and the run pass option and building that offense. But yeah, so the Colts might want to get there, to jump ahead of the Raiders. I think would be a team that could definitely, it's not that far up to move. They have Jimmy G, hasn't played a full season in his career. He's worked with Josh McDaniel, but clearly can't be their long-term plan at the position. So either of those teams are definitely possibilities to trade up.
Yeah.
The Titans at 11 are a team that could make the move as well. They drafted Malik Willis last year in the 3rd round. Electric in preseason, but then terrible when he actually got into the games in the regular season. They still owe Ryan Tannehill a lot of money, but I think that's a situation that they'll want to get out of before too long. So I think all those teams could move up.
Well, you mentioned Malik Willis, like small sample size. I think that's a guy that they knew that they were going to have to invest some time into. I would kind of be shocked, honestly, if they went another quarterback. But that being said, he was really bad last year. So, it's tough to say. If it's standing pat as it is, I would see Will Anderson going here, just getting that top talent off the board. And if no trades happen, really the only reason they would want to trade would be if a team was afraid of being leapfrogged. And Cardinals wouldn't want to go too far down, right? Because if they have the option for a 1A, 1B type player like Will Anderson, they're going to take it. All right, so the Colts are on the clock.
Yeah, so Colts, it's I said they've been connected to the quarterback, and I think Shane Steichen, so he was offensive coordinator with during some of Phillip Rivers' best years, and then for Justin Herbert, and then he came in and was there for Jalen Hurts' turnaround last year. I think that he has a great track record as a play caller, especially when it comes to getting receivers open down the field and coaching the quarterbacks to take their shots and hit them. I mean, so honestly, I think I do buy the narrative that he's going to want to bring in a quarterback. I don't think it's going to be Anthony Richardson though, just because watching him, I feel like evaluation of the player. I don't know. I think that I think people underestimate what Jalen Hurts was able to do before Shane Steichen, before he was the starter of the Eagles, as far as touch on the deep ball. And so I'm going to say Will Levis here.
You're skipping Stroud.
So skipping Stroud here. So part of that is, I think, looking at, I think Stroud probably has the most kind of natural put the ball where you want it in the schoolyard ability of these quarterbacks, not including Bryce Young. But I think that Will Levis is a little bit more refined. He can drive it down the field a little better. He also has a lot better running ability. CJ Stroud's somewhat of a statue relatively, compared to these other guys. It's not really, you're not going to have really quarterback design runs for CJ Stroud, I don't think, versus Will Levis, has a little bit of Josh Allen in him we were talking about, which, comes with the injury risks. But, so yeah, I think they'll take a, shoot for the, swing for the fence with Will Levis. There's a huge bust potential. But I think and honestly, I think the Colts should try to trade back from this spot. I think they're saddled with a policy for years of drafting non-premium positions. They got guard, Quentin Nelson. They got the off-ball linebacker and Shaquille Leonard, and they got safety. They drafted high Malik Hooker. They've drafted kind of all the non-premium positions, and now I think they could really stand to bolster that. But we're gonna go with the, like I said, the swing for the fences for the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Levis.
All right, so Stroud is falling, and who knows if that C2 test is going to be the difference. But if I'm the Seahawks, if I'm Pete Carroll, I could be excited about one of the quarterbacks, and trying to get a couple more years or 1 year out of Geno Smith, maybe 1.5, and develop something, someone like Anthony Richardson. But honestly, if Devin Witherspoon is here, this Pete Carroll loves his cornerbacks. He was a cornerback. I think they'll be super pumped to grab Witherspoon with the spot, who I think is the most polished cornerback coming out, and should be an instant producer for the defense, and that should give them enough depth to play that cover. If they continue with cover three, if they round out, they've got a whole lot of new faces there after the Legion boom moved on, but I think Witherspoon could be an anchor to one side of the field and help the defense just play on half the field. All right, the Lions. So, what are we looking at? Do they want a running back? Probably not. Do we go here? I mean, it's going to be off the edge. Another second cornerback. We've got this. We can bolster the offensive line, but they already have like a top 3 offensive line. Do we just continue to go strong there? I wouldn't be surprised if they go defensive. I think we're going to try to bolster that side of the field because let's be frank about it. They were the worst defense in football. And if that team can just get a little better on that side of the ball, man, they finished strong. That team could be dangerous. So I think there are a couple of takeaways. If they get 5 more takeaways from over the course of the season, that team's in the playoffs and competing. So they're going to go Christian Gonzalez, CB from Oregon. All right, Raiders.
So we got the Raiders. So, I think Raiders were really hoping to get one of those 2 cornerbacks. I think you're right there with the Lions pick. They did bring in a couple cornerbacks. I think Emmanuel Mosley and Cam Sutton. But they lost Jeff Okudah to the I forget, was it to the Falcons? But yeah, so I think Raiders are kind of reeling a little bit. It's like they really need playmakers all over, especially on defense. I think that Max Crosby is really their only standout defensive player, and so of course that's this little bit of overlap with Tyree Wilson, the best defensive prospect left on the board. So I think it'd be tough to go in that direction.
Could they combine for like a 1-2 punch, and say like, hey, let's sandwich in both sides?
For sure. I think it doesn't preclude you from taking them. It's a good point. And then I guess, well, honestly, I'm gonna say C.J. Stroud would be the pick here. No, I'm not looking at we talked about them, possibility to move up even for C.J. Stroud. I think that C.J. Stroud is a timing passer. Could really operate the quick passing game that Josh McDaniels had with Tom Brady and the Patriots for years. I do think that kind of works to his strength. So Tyree Wilson would be tempting, but yeah, if Witherspoon or Gonzalez were there, maybe they would go that direction. But without them, I think the pick is C.J. Stroud.
Just bringing up one thing I wanted to bring it on the side, make sure. Yeah, you were talking about the Josh McDaniels style offense. Hunter Renfrow, that guy gets open, sub 3 yard routes all the time, and he's just always this shifty guy. So I could easily see a sort of play style that banks around that. All right, going to the Falcons. Well, here I'm gonna brush up real quick. Just pause for a second. Did the Falcons do anything to the running back room? There's still Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson.
No, those are those guys. Those are their guys. Yeah, Algier, okay. Patterson, Huntley.
All right, so the Falcons. You know what?
So I know what you're looking at.
Yeah, if it comes to the Falcons, it gets to this point. It's not really trendy to take top 10 running backs, but Bijan Robinson could be the best guy coming out of the draft since Zeke Elliott or Leonard Fournette. This guy might be able to take over games, and what better friend can a young quarterback really have than just have a running back that keeps guys out of your face, right? They can't just blitz you all day long because you'll just be pounding right through them. So Bijan Robinson is that kind of elite runner that could just change the scope for this team. So I'm going Bijan Robinson with the Falcons at 8.
Just to comment on that real quick, so a couple of things. One is, so obviously Arthur Smith had Derrick Henry with the Titans, and they just spent big on the offensive line. They're already a solid running team. The fit is great. I think the value of this, of the player. The issue, of course, is the pattern. It's almost like you have a solid rookie year, then miss most of the second year to injury, have the third year you're not 100%, and then one good year as a pro before you get paid by somebody else. Right, so we're talking about Saquon Barkley, we're talking about Breece Hall, Javonte Williams, all Christian McCaffrey. Like, when's the last time, even Jonathan Taylor is on that path, J.K. Dobbins, it's like, you talk about the pay. Anyway, so that would be my question there. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I feel like somebody will fall in love with them and pick them, and the Falcons are a great candidate. But there is, it is a big issue.
So I'll get to the Arthur Smith bit, and this is sort of taken over in the NFL. You see it with the Packers, you saw it with the Titans, that you have 1A, 1B, and a third, a sprinkling of C, right? And sort of like a 60%, 30%, 10% split on carries. And you don't see Aaron Jones getting hurt. Derrick Henry has been hurt, but he was super high usage when they didn't have that second guy, right? But when they had Thunder and Thunder with DMC, right, DeMarco Murray, those were his most productive, healthiest years. I could see them saying, hey, we like Algier, we like Patterson, they've been doing great. Let's bolster this room to create some depth so that we don't need to worry about that running game hole. And that's where I think it largely comes in. But, it does devalue it. If you're only using a player 60% of the time, does that make it? Maybe not.
Just, for what it's worth, I think, Tyree Wilson, to get ahead on prospects, but Tyree Wilson, is somebody that, could go as early as number 2, to the Falcons, and Atlanta needs pass rush. They brought in some free agents. They brought in Calais Campbell. They just got Bud Dupree, but both of those guys are, older, especially Bud Dupree has some injury history. They have Ebikete they drafted last year, but, it's kind of a project. But, they don't really have, so anyway, just to debate a little bit, I think it's tough to take Bijan Robinson there.
Okay, no, it's good. It's good to get it. The one of the things that I was curious about, and this is just because we were talking about Arthur Smith, the Titans, Derrick Henry. You're the new GM in Tennessee. The last one traded away A.J. Brown and then promptly got fired after A.J. Brown put up 230 yards against them in the revenge match. Would you be afraid to pull the trigger on trades, or would you be looking to make your mark on this draft and say, hey, like, I'm in charge of this team, I'm not afraid? Not plugging Bijan Robinson for you, but talking about like trades. Just if you're running the Titans, are you looking to make your mark, or are you looking to get value and try to work with that Tannehill contract, which is the biggest in the league?
I think that so there has been talk of Derrick Henry being associated with the Eagles, or other teams, and it's the type of player, if you can get value, it's like, is he really going to be there by the time you're ready to compete, for AFC Championship game? But I forget his name. The GM for the Titans, comes in. I understand with very, very high, very good reputation. So my guess is he's gonna have a couple of years window. So I think he can take some chances.
We'll take some chances. All right. So let's keep on going. We've got Chicago Bears. Man, this team got mired in contracts, had to dig its way out, and is only finally recovering from salary cap catastrophe. So, I mean, they're looking to win around the Justin Fields window, and I think the position that is going to help him the most is offensive line, making sure that he is protected. They want depth. They want to make sure that he's not getting hit in the ribcage like he was last year. So we're just going to go with Peter Skoronski, offensive line, Northwestern, and Yeah, I think this will be a pretty slam dunk pick. I think there's a lot of value for them here, and they might go, based on what they like with Paris Johnson, for example. We were talking about Broderick Jones. If Brooks is right, then maybe Broderick Jones is the right guy to pair here. But just based on the value where we have everyone, we're going to go Skoronski here.
I like it.
All right, joining us from the Eagles, we'll call it the box office instead of the front office, but Kevin Roseman, as we say, he knows the Eagles as good as anybody. Kevin, you there?
Yep, and I'm happy to be on here with you guys, offer some insight as a diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan. With how the board is shaping up and that pick by the Bears with Peter Skoronski, I heavily believe that this 10 pick is going to go into the trenches. Harry Roseman built this roster around winning at the line of scrimmage, and I'm going to keep it simple here. I'm going to go with Paris Johnson. I'm actually glad that Skoronski went off the board first to make my job easier, and I think that Paris Johnson is a plug-and-play guy that could immediately start at guard. We had Isaac Seumalo leaving free agency. And the thing that I love about Paris Johnson is that he has around 800 snaps at right guard in 2021 before he shifted to left tackle. So I think that he can easily slide into guard and then eventually be groomed to take the right tackle spot once Lane Johnson is out of the picture. So Paris Johnson running up to the stand, locking it in.
Running it up. All right, nice. Now you're talking about building the trenches. The Eagles tend to have a drafting pattern. Can you tell us more about what it is that you value and don't value out of Philadelphia?
Yeah, so right now the tone in the city is if Bijan Robinson is on the board right now, everybody is going crazy, banging their drums to draft Bijan Robinson. But that high of a pick, it's just not going to happen with Harry Roseman. And who knows what will happen? There's definitely a high probability chance that this pick's traded. But any type of premium pick like this is going to go into the offensive line or defensive line. Some positions that typically he would never spend resources on is linebacker and safety. A lot of Eagles fans love the safety position after having Brian Dawkins hold it down, Weapon X, for so many years, and they've kind of fell in love with that position. But we had C.J. Gardner-Johnson leaving free agency. Marcus Epps gone in free agency. So our safety position is thin, but I think, there's guys on the market right now that potentially could slide in there, such as Budda Baker, if they can manipulate the cap enough. Kevin Byard from the Titans is also another option there. But I think that these high premium picks are going to go into the trenches, and, other areas, linebacker, safety, things of that nature can get sorted out in free agency or later day pick values.
Nice, yeah. No, I believe you. And it's when I look at the Eagles, everyone looked at 2 years ago as like this big surprise, and 3 years ago like what a flop. But realistically, it was the offensive line just had the most injuries in the league. They had 13th. Their 13th best player was starting games by the end of that season. And then when they were healthy, Jalen Hurts makes the playoffs. And then when they were really healthy and Hurts had some time, we saw what happened last year. So it really makes sense to bolster that position. It's definitely going to help. And you can recreate Miles Sanders in the aggregate, right? You don't need to draft Bijan Robinson. You can just strengthen the trench, and then some guys will get open.
Great. Yep. And if you remember Andre Dillard, was drafted recently as a first-round pick, so he offered that left tackle depth there. You have Jordan Mailata getting coached up and becoming the starter there. So I think last year's season was a product of having depth on a very strong offensive line. So further justifying the pick here, you plug and play, have depth where you need it, and you protect Jalen Hurts.
Absolutely. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Padraic.
Just speaking of the Eagles, so the offensive line pick, we talked a minute before we went on air about Cam Jurgens. So I guess you pick the offensive tackle here if you're thinking Jurgens is going to wait another year to be the center. But if you think he's going to go right into right guard, then you already have, a best five. So you're picking an offensive tackle at 10 to, I mean, plug and play, but like who's going to sit? You know, they have solid across the board. The value and also the drafting pattern of the Eagles, you know, what they value makes sense. Two things. I was thinking, one, you know, I mentioned the top two cornerbacks, Devin Witherspoon and Christian Gonzalez. I think if either of those guys are on the board, I think they don't make it past 10 with the Eagles. You know, I think that the Eagles need to get younger and less expensive at cornerback. Darius Slay and James Bradbury both came back. But, you know, on 1 year situations, I think both of them. I don't know about Bradbury. And then the other thing I would point out is, you know, like you said, they do love to, oh, sorry, I mean, Tyree Wilson, but also, you know, I think this is where Jackson Smith-Njigba comes into play. I think this is where he starts becoming a possibility, you know, as a, you know, they have, what's his name for the slot receiver, you know, who am I thinking of?
Devontae Smith?
No, so Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown on the outside, and then they have the third guy who's, you know, a good player, but he's not, you know, the kind of get open immediately, shifty Julian Edelman type. So anyway, I think that's also a possibility at 10.
Do you agree, Kevin? Or are those possibilities, or is it just like firmly trenches? That's just a Roseman principle.
No, I agree with that. I think the pick's going to go into the trenches, but you know, like Padraic just mentioned, the third wide receiver right now is Quez Watkins, who, you know, has quick speed, made flashes last year, but he killed us in drops. Had some massive drops in the Super Bowl. He had a fumble on Thursday night against the Commanders to drop us to that first loss. So you know, he's in the hot seat right now, and he's definitely in a place where there's going to be competition. So I'm on board with that. I don't think it'll be at the 10th pick. I think they'll bring somebody in a later day pick to challenge for that wide receiver position. But I do agree with that.
I've got one more question for you before I let you go. My favorite, or my darling, I say, you know, super underrated or guy from last year was Britton Covey. He became a punt and kick returner for you. Is there a world where he takes the Edelman path, where he starts as a kick returner, just kind of finds his way onto the football field and makes it as a slot receiver?
It's tough to say. I don't really see him getting above Quez Watkins, and we just actually signed somebody in free agency. He's got a tough name to pronounce, but he's from the Falcons.
Zacchaeus.
Yeah. So I don't see him getting above those two guys. And actually, my personal opinion is, you know, depending on how the off season goes in training camp, I'm not sure that Britton Covey even makes the roster again this year. He was definitely on the hot seat in Philadelphia. You know, a guy that's never dropped the ball and fumbled for us, but you know, didn't really get those yards that you would like to get on special teams, which is one of our weak spots on the roster. So he'll be a fun guy to watch in the offseason, and hopefully he can make more of an impact this year.
All right. Well, thanks for joining. We'll catch up with you again at pick 30.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you. All right. New GM, Tennessee Titans on the clock.
The Titans, you know, they just lost their left tackle to retirement, Taylor Lewan, who'd been there for, I don't know, a decade or more.
All pro.
It's funny, they brought in Andre Dillard, who we just mentioned from the Eagles, who, you know, by all reports last offseason was looking, I mean, you know, people were saying it looked like a house and whatever. And, you know, it's like obviously he got drafted high because, you know, physical traits, but never, you know, I'm sure, is it Kevin, probably have terrible things to say about him. But, you know, I think, you know, so they have a piece anyway. He could potentially be a decent starter for them. But I think they really need to bolster the offensive line. You know, and I think those we talked about Broderick Jones with Georgia, and, you know, I don't, you know, like the other one to talk about would be Darnell Wright with Tennessee. And you know, I kind of lean towards Darnell Wright in part because just from what I watched of him against Will Anderson, you know, completely shut down Will Anderson, shut down B.J. Ojulari. You know, he's a player that I think struggled 2 years ago when they moved him to left tackle, but then when he moved back to right tackle, you know, something like he allowed 8 pressures and no sacks and like 400 pass rush snaps. So I'm gonna leapfrog here. I'm gonna go with Darnell Wright, tackle out of Tennessee, and fitting that it would be local Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, you know that's always going to be popular in town. If you get the local guy, then they're never going to be upset about that. And obviously, the Tennessee Volunteers had a fantastic season. You know, they've got maybe four guys that might be drafted on day one for the offensive side, right? Like there's a lot of rumors about Hendon Hooker, and you've got two wide receivers plus an offensive lineman. Like there, you know, there's a lot of firepower coming out of Tennessee in this draft. All right, the Texans were their second pick at 12.
So, you know, the Texans, I mean, honestly, like with two picks in top 12, you know, 2 and 12, it'd be tough to go both on one side of the ball. You know, typically I think teams, you know, will kind of distribute that and get one offense, one defense. At the same time, like I really don't think Tyree Wilson is going to fall this far. You know, I think that he's a player. Like I said, I think he could go. You know, he's had some similarities with I forget his name, first overall pick for the Jaguars last year.
Walker.
You know, as far as the length, is that
Walker, Trayvon Walker.
Walker, yeah. But you know, just watching a little bit, like you know, the guy, the upside, like this guy could be like a real game wrecker, like destroy offensive linemen. I saw him, you know, it was I forget the game he was playing, but he was just it was against TCU, and he was just destroying like moving around and destroying like several different offensive linemen over and over with just bull rush, but like you know you just get under them and just like you know maraud them back into the corridor. I think that upside is too high. Like I said, I don't think he's going to last that long. Yeah, I hate to go defense for 2 and 12, but.
Well, honestly, teams do it a lot. It seems like they do it more than anything. It's become more of a trend to slam dunk one side of the ball, and then you just create an identity, right? And with D'Amico Ryans coming in, defensive guy, like yeah, why not two defensive players? I wouldn't be surprised if they give him all the tools. And of course, you're like Tyree Wilson. This represents the biggest value jump that we've had on the draft board so far. So it seems like a slam dunk for the Texans. Any further insights before we move to the Jets?
No.
All right, New York Jets. We've got Robert Saleh. Has changed the culture there. Apparently, they seem to be pretty close.
So, you know, reportedly, Jets and Packers are talking again. No deal imminent, but, you know, some hope that maybe they could get it done, you know, this week. There's the whole thing about, like, doesn't happen before Saturday afternoon when you know, the Jets spend their 2 third-round picks or something, then it might not be until August or something like that. But, you know, it seems like it's going to happen sooner or later. So they're not getting a quarterback here. You know, that would be crazy. But, you know, so I think the big thing for the Jets you know, the defense is great. You know, they brought in, I think, a lot of the right players. They drafted well. I think they really need to focus on the offense and, you know, specifically, I'm going to say offensive line, Broderick Jones, because, you know, they have Mekhi Becton, you know, the, you know, mammoth tackle, but, you know, hasn't been able to stay healthy. And part of that is probably because he's, whatever, 6'7", 360 or, you know, whatever he is,
Huge.
you know, the athleticism that he has. So they have, you know, they have some decent pieces on the offensive line, but I think they could really use a franchise left tackle. I think George Fant being the right tackle, and you know some decent interior linemen. But I think that would really it just makes a lot of sense for the Jets to pick tackle.
Yeah, and if what Brooks was talking about is hinting at the future, that like imagine if that team had Mekhi Becton and Broderick Jones just anchoring both sides of the line and just you know you shall not pass for defensive edges, like that'd be insane if those pan out. Our Patriots coming up here. We got, well, I know what the tendencies tend to be, but what are we thinking? Are we bolstering wide receiver room? Are we getting depth at cornerback, which we tend to always do? Or are we looking for the next Gronk? You know, what is it?
No, I think you look at a couple of things, you know. So they lost Jacoby Myers and brought in Juju Smith-Schuster. You know, in some ways it's kind of a wash. You know, they don't really have the high-end speed. There's the big question about Jackson Smith-Njigba is that basically, like, you know, I think he played almost entirely in the slot, and you know he's you know 6 feet, most of 6 feet tall, and you know, but you know, there's the question just because people haven't seen it about lining up outside and beating press coverage and being an outside receiver. Plus, the Patriots don't tend to go that high with receiver. So that'd be a tough one to pass up. But I think they'll bolster the secondary. I think they have some good pieces. Some rookies that played last year, Jonathan Jones and what's his name, the three-way player Jones, Marcus Jones.
Yeah, Marcus Jones.
But I think they're a little bit undermanned in the secondary overall. So I'm gonna have them pick the legacy or the Joey Porter Jr. To come in, be a physical cornerback, like the size that I think they could use.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I love about this guy is not afraid of impact, right? And he seeks it, he cherishes it, he loves the idea of taking down players that are bigger than him. And one of the things, Bill Belichick is famous for quoting when scouting Edelman, it's, I don't know what I'm going to do with you yet, but you can play football. And I think that's what he's going to think about Joey Porter Jr. is, you can play football, right? And I special teams right off the bat, immediate contributor, plus can play with the depth of the defensive backfield, and who knows, with the prevalence of the nickel packages, basically that is everyone's starting package now. It's the 3-4 and the 4-3 have kind of been pushed aside by necessity of the passing game in the NFL. Having an extra defensive back is never going to hurt, especially if he can tackle, right? Like, this guy can tackle like a linebacker, then sign me up. I'd be super pumped as a fan for that pick. All right, Packers.
One more thing on
go
that
ahead.
pick before we move on, if I can. So talk about if Bill Belichick still sees himself, to have built the Patriots dynasty, versus like having been along for the ride when Tom Brady was there. You think about what did they do? What did those Patriots do when they had premium draft picks? They got Richard Seymour, they got Vince Wilfork, they got, Ty Warren, they got, the Dante Hightower. Devin McCourty was at the end of the round, but it's like the first round picks for the Patriots that have really panned out and that really, I think, built that team were defense, especially when they had premium picks.
Right. Yep. And that was Bill Belichick's, calling. He was a defensive coordinator for the Super Bowl Giants back in 1991, was it? 91? Late 80s and 90s, and he got to see the best linebacker maybe to ever play the game, and he's still a guru as far as I'm concerned on that side of the ball. All right, are we ready for the Packers? I suppose so, right? So the odd thing is that there's a value pick dropping down here, but it would be such a slap in the face to Aaron Rodgers if, as he's leaving, you picked up JSN from Ohio State. Just oh my God, like I almost just can't believe they'll do it, just because the memes that would happen. Be like, have all pro quarterback for 16 years. Finally draft a wide receiver, like, I don't know. I think they get hung out to dry if they take that pick. So, but it's kind of the best fit because they need talent. They need talent, right? They are thin there. I mean, Christian Watson. Go ahead.
Well, Christian Watson, is like the kind of straight line speed burner, deep threat, and then you get Romeo Doubs is a little big bodied and contested catch, and so Jackson Smith-Njigba fits in perfectly. It's like those three complement each other really well, I think.
I'm doing it. I'm pulling the trigger, and I'm gonna deal with it. And if you haven't traded Rodgers by now, then he's going to he's gonna be like, fucking get me out. I want out.
Like I'm staying now.
Yeah, I don't know. I think, because you look at an all-time great receiver class 2 years ago, or 3 years ago now, when they picked Love, and it's like, really, like, I still had 5 great years in me, and you could have given me a premier talent, and you didn't. I'll go to the Jets, where they do have 3 premier wide receivers who are all better than the guys we have here, by the way. If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I would take that personally. Aaron Rodgers seems to hold a grudge pretty begrudgingly.
The Jets are not as strong at receiver as you might think, though. Because they sent what's his name to the Browns, Elijah Moore.
Oh wait.
So now they're looking at McCall Hardman, Lazard, behind Garrett Wilson, and then Corey Davis.
That's
So
true.
some names, but
That's
more
true.
name value than production value.
Yeah. Well, Garrett Wilson was balling out. But yeah, the
This is
that slipped my mind about the Elijah Moore. Um, Still, I if I'm Aaron Rodgers and I see Broderick Jones get picked, that's another one. I'd be like, yes, sign me up. But it's all of those things. It's tough to see. Guy, what's this would be like Montana, changing teams going into his 40s, like, and Montana was great for the Chiefs, right? What was that, 1993, 13-3 with the Chiefs, number one seed. Like, it's a long time ago, but it's that's pretty reasonable comparison as far as all-time talents are concerned. All right, Washington Commanders, the worst place to play in the entire NFL as rated by the players. So does that mean that whoever gets drafted, kind of trudges up to the stage? It's for those, what I'm referencing is the poll that came out where it rated every facility that a pro team has, right? Going from athletic training staff, strength conditioning coaches, head coaches, how you treat your family, everything. The Commanders, unsurprisingly, based on all the scandals that were coming out, were rated dead last. And above them were like the Cardinals were one of the worst, and I forget what the other worst teams, but the Dolphins and Vikings were number 1 and 2 on that list. So just a shout out. I'll post a link in the description, moving to that article, and Pat McAfee going off about it. It was a hilarious thing, so I'll put that there too. But Commanders, if we're going here, no reason to go edge, right? Defensive side of the ball, is it going to get bolstered? Do they think Sam Howell? They've said the job is yours. Do they give him an extra weapon in the form of a tight end? I think that's where I'm going, is tight end. And absolutely, we heard Brooks talking about Darnell Washington maybe having some blocking upside the way Gronk had. That could bolster an entire offense when you're going front to back. But there's such a deep tight end group, and Michael Mayer has been producing, Dalton Kincaid has been producing, but Mayer did it against some better competition. So Michael Mayer is going to come in. We're going to run that up, and that puts up the Steelers.
So I think, so I just want to say you have Brian Branch on there as cornerback. I think that would be he's considered the number 1 safety on the board rate. Just to throw that out there. But I say that because I think the Steelers are definitely in the market for a cornerback. They lost Cam Sutton in free agency, went to the Lions. I think that I really want to see Joey Porter fall, and watch Joey Porter Jr. Record his first sack in a Steelers uniform would be pretty exciting.
That'd be sick.
I think they're going to go with the next best. Deontay Banks out of Maryland, I think is just checks elite athleticism. He has the size. I think he's I want to say he's got press cover ability. I think without further ado, we'll go with Deontay Banks, the cornerback out of Maryland.
So how come Banks over Branch?
So Branch, being a safety, I mean, they have, Minka Fitzpatrick would be more, I guess is the, sorry, I'm looking at my, Minka Fitzpatrick, and then I guess they lost Terrell Edmonds in free agency. I mean, so, I think positional value would be a big part of it. I think that, safeties, as we saw, there's, we mentioned earlier, Buda Baker and Tyrann Mathieu both went out of Arizona. So there's a couple of safeties that could be available, but also just the economics of it. It's that if you're gonna sign an elite cornerback in his prime, you're gonna be spending what, $30 million a year versus half of that, or I don't know, numbers out. So that would be a big part of it. And I think also at cornerback, they really don't have a number 1. A top cornerback. See, they brought in Patrick Peterson, but what is he?
Older.
34 years old at this point. I think that he's a contributor. Beyond that, it's like Levi Wallace, Akilla Witherspoon, Jackson. It's like they don't really have a guy to be their number 1 cornerback. So I think that's an area of need, value on the board, and positional value.
All right. All right, so we're going to the Lions, and I see Miles Murphy just dropping down the board right here in value base, like pairing him with Aiden Hutchinson and, kind of slamming in the sides. We saw, Hutchinson do everything on, chasing down plays. He was dropping into coverage, getting picks. He did everything last year. I wouldn't mind pairing him with there, but they also did lose Aiden Hutchinson. So for that reason, I'm going Dalton Kincaid.
Jay Hawkinson.
What did I say? Did I say Aiden Hutchinson? No. TJ Hawkinson, yes. Yeah. Excuse me. You knew. So they did trade away Hawkinson. I think Dalton Kincaid will give them extra arsenal here. I don't think they necessarily need it, but, tight end has that added value of being able to bolster the run game as well. I think they'll be happy to get that guy that's able, not afraid to get his nose into some linebackers and move forward. Now, the Buccaneers, this is another, interesting spot. We've got Todd Bowles was a defensive back himself. Brian Branch could go on. We talk about this team turning around in the post-Brady era now, as short as it was. But they really are, I think they're going to be defensive identity. You've got Dean that they were able to bring back, right? And if you want to make your defensive backs better, you need a rusher. So for that reason, I'm going to go Miles Murphy here, and hope that you get a little bit more pressure on the ball. They were really good at stopping the run, but those guys are getting older, right? Those run stuffers, nose tackle is getting older. You want to be able to put some pressure on as well, and especially if they're going to be looking to make more turnovers instead of just the possession, hey, we're okay if we just stop you, hold you to field goals because we know Brady will get it done. Now it's going to be a little bit different of a narrative. So we're going to go Miles Murphy. All right, Seahawks. I'm pretty ecstatic here because one of the names that they've been thrown around is maybe going as high as 5 to pick up a quarterback that's willing to sit for a year as they develop them, but I'm pumped about Anthony Richardson here dropping. This would be a slam dunk pick. I'm not even answering the phone. Someone tries to trade with me at this point. I'm saying heck no. I'm running this up and I'm putting pressure on other teams to pick quickly. Because that has value too. See if they can make some mistakes. If this guy falls, I'm slam dunking it for Pete Carroll and giving him a reason to stick around another 5 years with a power run. That now, the defenses will have to spy the quarterback because you've got the most athletic quarterback coming into the draft since Cam Newton. So just absolute freak in the draft. Would love to see him develop under Geno Smith. There's no pressure in that situation. I think it's a win-win for everybody. All right, Los Angeles, the Bolts.
Oh, yeah, I think, you talk about, what is everybody been projecting for the Chargers, or the buzz is that they need speed at wide receiver. Talking about was it scheme or was it personnel that Justin Herbert didn't throw the ball down the field as much last year? I tend to think probably the former. Like we said, Shane Steichen left to take the offensive coordinator job with the Eagles, and what happened? The Eagles threw the ball down the field. But I think I do think that they're going to be tempted to kind of seal that hole. And with Zay Flowers, I think, is a player that I think a lot of people feel higher on than the overall buzz that his name has. I feel like it's been picking up. People compare him. So some have said Antonio Brown, which obviously you're getting ahead of yourself. But just as far as the ability to move around and to kind of take off and accelerate. I think play the ball down the field. And also I think. Probably some. I've heard boneheaded mistakes used to describe Zay Flowers, but I don't know. I shouldn't But so there's that question. But I think he's I think the explosive down the field receiver that I think their receiving room lacks.
Okay, so we'll go with Zay Flowers, and now that's Boston College. That's your old stomping grounds. The
Sure.
They haven't really.
I think he had, they say he had terrible quarterback play.
I was going to say they haven't had a good offense since Matt Ryan, and so if he's showing up and still performing when he's the only option, and it feels like, why wouldn't you double or triple team Zay Flowers, and he's still getting it done. And it seems like, apart from elite size, he's just like producing at every spot. So I don't know, maybe he is that good. Maybe he could be someone like an Antonio Brown. That would
Boston
be
College last year had 21 team receiving touchdowns, 12 of which were to Zay Flowers, right? So you talk about like target share, demanding a opportunity. Obviously, yeah, I think he was the bright spot for them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Ravens. We still have. We say Brian Branch has fallen down. Are you going for value, or are you trying to plug some holes, or both?
So, sorry, I'm having slow processing. So I mean, there's a player that stands out to me on the board right now, and I just want to check it against their team names is Kalijah Cansey. So talking about undersized, explosive pass rushing defensive tackle out of Pittsburgh. Anybody else you can think of that fits that bill? Anyway, that first.
Out of Pittsburgh specifically, or just
Aaron Donald? But I think
yeah.
Aaron Donald is longer than Cansey coming out.
Well,
is it University of Pittsburgh?
yeah, well, it's Donald was a weird spot because he's one of those guys that produced, but he was undersized. Everyone was like, is this going to translate? So even though he produced like a beast, he was like the 13th pick, and we saw that he can continue to produce, and the size didn't really matter. But yeah, I mean, if Cansey's even got hints of that, the Ravens would be all over it. Is that where they're going?
I can't. Yes. Let's pull the trigger. So I'm looking for who they have in the interior, but yeah. So basically, I think that it's not a very strong defensive tackle class, especially when you're talking about disruptive pass rush from the interior. You got Jalen. What's his name?
Jalen Carter,
and then Kalijah Cansey, and then after that, I think there's a huge drop off.
Yeah.
So I think there's positional value, or in terms of like what else will be available, and also I think he has a chance to be a truly disruptive interior pass rusher, and he's also stout against the run. The knock on him is that he's undersized. Love the Ravens take Kalijah Cansey.
You will get a kick out of this potentially, but the current nose tackle on the roster is none other than Michael Pierce.
Oh yeah, Michael Pierce has been there for a while. They lost Calais Campbell, right? Was he with them last?
Campbell, yeah, right.
And I think that Cansey isn't going to be a nose tackle. I think he's more profile as the second.
No, but yeah, you'd put him right next to him, right? And you kind of plug and play, depend on passing downs, running downs, or you just say, here's the big guy that's going to take up two gaps, and then the other guy, Cansey's going to split the seam to get in there. All right, Vikings. We just lost Patrick Peterson. Brian Branch is falling way too far. I'm going to slam dunk here as well. Not too much to get to it. Just a huge value play, and also they've always had a good linebacker room. They would like to get the ball back a little bit more. Anytime that this team has a chance to put more balls in the hands of Jefferson, it's going to be a win. So getting someone that can take the ball away. Now that being said, there's one player that kind of stood out that, he's only 160 pounds, but being able to score from the defensive side, this guy had the most pick sixes ever in NCAA. Emmanuel Forbes is going to get picked somewhere. And the question is going to be who or how, but if someone like Brian Branch is sliding down this far, I think the Vikings will go with the safer pick there.
So just I want to make sure so I mentioned that earlier. So Brian Branch, I have him as a safety and not a cornerback.
Oh, yeah, it's let's see.
And so that would be just
I don't know if he'll translate. I mean, he could easily be safety, but the safety, let's see.
So the reason I mentioned that is that
well, either way, the departures of
bolster the secondary.
Yeah, bolstering the secondary. You need flexibility there. You've got the departure of Harrison Smith, and yeah, we'll go there. So Jaguars. I should
Right,
say
so
imminent
the
departure
Jaguars.
of Harrison Smith. Just the age is getting up there.
That's fair. That's fair for sure.
All right, so
Give me 1 second with the Jaguars.
Jaguars.
So definitely looking at cornerback, and there's some depth for cornerbacks that could be picked in this range. So I'm looking at Emmanuel Forbes. I'm looking at M. Smith. And then there's the Keely Ringo that we talked about earlier out of Georgia. Talking about somebody who's the value is very widely ranged. He's I think especially he's a bigger cornerback, and I think that. Of Tariq Woolen last year at the Seahawks, I think teams may take a hard look at that.
While we mentioned Ringo, I just want to put in one thing. Anyone who wasn't on a top 50 list, we gave them a value of 55 just to create a balanced system here. So you might see a lot of 55s. Kili Ringo is our first one, so I just wanted to get a little reminder for that. So go ahead.
So yeah, I'm just looking at I think we might go a little further up the board. Take a Lucas Van Ness, the edge out of Iowa. Take a little bit higher value on the board. I think there's cornerbacks that'll be available in the second round, so they might go that direction later. But there aren't a whole lot of. To get so Van Ness, I think he's shorter. He never started. Nickname Hercules. I think he's definitely an effort player. But yeah, maybe the inside out type that might be able to rush from the inside on passing downs. But yeah, we'll go with Lucas Van Ness.
All right, Lucas Van Ness to the Jaguars. So that puts the pressure on me. Have I gotten a deal with Saquon Barkley? Because if I haven't, I would be happy with Jahmyr Gibbs here. So this is an interesting spot for me, trying to compare, what's going to happen. And honestly, I think they feel like they're strong enough where they might try to get it done with Barkley and go from there. So I'm going to assume that that's not the plug and play here, but instead they're going to go with more offensive weapons. Let me just make sure we get this up to. Yeah, Isaiah Hodgins, Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Jamison Crowder. A lot of guys who get hurt. They have produced at some point a little bit. They did pick up Darren Waller, but I'm going to go with the 2022 Blitnikoff winner here, and I'm going to add Jordan Addison to the roster, and really give them as much arsenal as possible on this side. Also, someone who can seemingly get open whenever they felt like, and this was. If you guys recall, basically the first major portal transfer player that took advantage of the system, right? And I'm happy it's happening in college football. He'll probably be forever. He'll forever go down as that number one or first player to get that transfer fee and everything. So I think the talent's there. I think the system is good enough. I wish that there were another offensive tackle that were a slam dunk. I think Osiris Torrance could be there. Anton Harrison, these guys could go in. John Michael Schmitz, there's guys here that could play the position and bolster the strength for this team. But I think a talent like Jordan Addison doesn't go unignored, which is going to make Jerry Jones a little unhappy because this guy loves his flashy players. But we're going to go Cowboys next. And looking at the board, where do we go? What are the Cowboys' real needs? Before I continue, is there anyone that's thinking about trading up? Are the Dolphins going to try to get back into round one, do you think? After being penalized for tampering?
I don't see anybody on the board that's like. Well, actually, I'm glad that you mentioned that because he's so far down that I think there are people out there that have Hendon Hooker as quarterback as high as quarterback 2 in this class. So Hendon Hooker is interesting because he tore his ACL after like 8 games or something like that. And so he'll be 25 years old, I think, going into next year. So probably not going to be ready to play. He's probably going to have a red shirt year. But looking at him, pro comp, and I was ready to like pro comp that'll blow your mind. Alex Smith. I think so
Wow.
we're talking about um, 6'3" and change, and 217. I think Alex Smith is 6'4", 217. Both mobile, but like not like explosive runners. But also and then I think also neither one has howitzer for an arm, but both throw like a really pretty deep ball. And I'd say of all the passers in this draft, he looks like the most polished thrower who turns the hips, momentum through the throw, follow through. I think that somebody's going to take a chance at Hendon Hooker in the first round. So yes, I absolutely think that that somebody might look to trade
Yeah. So I mean, there was
for that player.
there was a
But
lot of
honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if he was gone by this point either.
right. He could easily be gone. And really, when you're looking at it, all the last picks, right? You're talking about premium quarterbacks on all these teams, right? Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Derek Carr, uh, Jalen Hurts, and Patrick Mahomes. Of this list, Cowboys Dak Prescott is definitely the closest to the hot seat out of any of them, and I think that they'd be happy to pick someone like Hooker and say, all right, prove it, Dak, this year. The team's yours, and if this guy might not be ready for 2 years anyways, so don't feel the pressure, right? He's definitely not playing. For that reason, I could see them picking this up, and then maybe down the line, 3 years down the line, that means you're going to start throwing bombs to CD Lamb, just beautiful teardrop passes into the bucket, because it seems like CD Lamb has all the athleticism and they've got all the talent that they need in there. But the other discussion for them, with Zeke being released, whether or not to grab Jahmyr Gibbs, because Tony Pollard had his best production as the backup, right? When he came in, yes, he was averaging 5.5 yards a carry, but he did it when teams brought in the nickel defense, right? And so he was maybe taking advantage of weaker run defenses. I don't know that he's just a, here you go, we're going to give you the offense guy. So I would definitely entertain trades if I'm the Cowboys. But if it's me and I'm picking, I'm really having a tough time with Hooker versus Jahmyr Gibbs. But if it comes down to it, I'm gonna try to wait till later to grab Hooker, and I'm gonna grab Gibbs now, and try to get that year. Now it's worth talking about the first round. When you draft a quarterback or any player, right, you're getting that 5th-year option, and it's especially coveted with the quarterbacks. Because of the position, how important it is, and how big the contracts are. So if you do find your guy, you get that rookie deal for the 5th year. The issue I have with that is none of these guys go to the 5th year, right? You're looking at what's happening right now in Baltimore. They let him have the 5th year, didn't pay him. Maybe he always wanted out. Maybe Lamar Jackson was always destined to leave, but every other team pays them early, right? Even going back, Jared Goff got paid. Josh Allen got paid early. Burrow gets paid early. Mahomes, Hurts, they're all getting paid early.
So if you're going to pick up the 5th year, like, you're either in quarterback purgatory, and it's like if the guy isn't the guy you want to sign long term, then he isn't the guy you want starting in the 5th year of his contract. Right?
So it sounds good, but I really think it's not actually as valuable as teams want it to be. So I'm going to go Gibbs. I'm going to go for this guy 1A so that Pollard can continue to thrive in the 1B role and to give depth to that team there. So that leaves Buffalo Bills. We got 5 picks left. Only 31 teams picking because the Dolphins lost their first round pick. Buffalo Bills, what are you looking at?
Yeah, so looking at the Bills, I think, let's see, they brought in, I mean, they lost, it's funny, you talk about position value and, positions that don't get drafted high and running backs. Another one's been linebacker, but I think that's an interesting thing that like we won't really discuss or haven't really discussed because I think this draft class doesn't have that Devin White or Roquan Smith type of player, but both of those guys are in the news in the sense that Roquan Smith just got paid. Tremaine Edmonds, from the Bills is the reason why I mentioned it. Just got paid to go to the Bears, and Devin White, of course, asked for a trade, and part of that is, I think, honestly, if you're gonna negotiate a contract, if you're a young stud linebacker, you might never have a better market than right now. Like Devin White, if he were to sign a new contract right now, he'd get paid, I think, a lot more than maybe 2 years. I don't know, depending, just because of the, how much money gets spent on linebackers in the last couple of years. But yeah, I don't think that guy is there for the Bills to replace Jermaine Edmonds with. You're looking at the board. I think that I don't know. They have some players that rotate. Bills like to rotate in the defensive line. So they have some players, but Brian Brzee is definitely a possibility. Is kind of a run stopping interior player. Honestly, I think I'm gonna say Osiris Torrance. The offensive guard. I think out of Florida is gonna be the pick here. Obviously, you talk about Josh Allen. The transition from seeing himself as a football player first to seeing himself as a quarterback first, and run less or whatever. Maybe rely more on a running game. They brought in Damian Harris, who's a little bit bigger, than Devin Singletary, who left. So I think bring in Torrance. Maybe give yourself try to shift a little bit more towards running back focused offense. At least have that possibility, because you talk about like Josh Allen is running in the 4-minute offense, or when they're up by 20. I'm sure Bills fans are cringing.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
right.
You don't want that.
Right. It's it's an interesting spot talking about the Buffalo Bills, because they up until this year, they had 3rd-round pick running backs in 3 straight drafts. Right. You had Singletary, Cook, and I'm forgetting the other one, but they're all off the team now, and they did pick up Damian Harris. Moss, right?
I mean, Singletary contributed a bit with them, and Cook is
Cook is there
potentially 1A this year. It's a strategy that they've done fine with, but yeah, it's not exactly getting them to that point of being able to really lean into the running back.
Yeah,
running game.
I guess what I'm getting at is with the acquisition of Damian Harris, and then you have Nyheim Hines being that scat back. Having an extra lineman also bolsters those guys' performance, right? Damian Harris has proven with the Patriots, who have very rarely are the Patriots a running team, but Damian Harris was good enough, right? He was getting it done. So I like the pick. Having an extra interior lineman that maybe moves around, right? They I believe Osiris that moved to left tackle? No, I'm not thinking of him. I'll keep that one for later. So the Bills will definitely get stronger there. Helps everyone on the offense, and even an extra half second on some plays for Gabe Davis to get an extra 10 yards down the field is a big difference, because we know Josh Allen can get him the ball. Other elite quarterbacks that have gotten hit more than they deserve. Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, they're picking at 28. Any what kind of insights do you have, or where are the Bengals looking?
I mean, so the Bengals lost both of their starting safeties in free agency. So that's definitely a direction that they could look. I think to the secondary in general. Pulling up their depth chart, I want to see what else they have. Let's see, Cincinnati Bengals. They can definitely add to offensive line, defensive line. So you get the Brzee. We talked for a while about Nolan Smith, which obviously it's hard to figure out. Like you have to know what plan a team has for him to kind of see where he fits into what they have. But yeah, so looking at so they have it's Chidobe Awuzie was a really solid player, cornerback. I think last year the Chiefs invested several picks into the secondary in the draft, and those players played and they won the Super Bowl. And so I think the temptation here, the thing will be to kind of copy that, or to I think bolstering their secondary is really important given the losses. They do have. I'm looking at Dax Hill. They drafted last year out of Michigan. So they do have possibility. at safety. So yeah, I'm gonna have them go cornerback here. I think the positional value, and so we'll take Emmanuel Forbes. He's the top cornerback on the board right now. I think they'll bolster their secondary, and I think their defensive coordinator will be a candidate for head coach. Coming up, it's like give him some tools, keep him happy.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll give a shout out to Brooks if the read is right on Christopher Smith being the best safety in the nation coming out, which I'm sure it is. If a team was going to pick a player who's not on this list, and we just talked about how good Georgia was, Christopher Smith didn't need to do Earl Thomas type things in Georgia because they had backfield pressure on every single play, it seemed like. So, who knows? That guy, he might just be insane. And if the read, if they're talking to the coaches and they say, hey, this guy can ball, right? And you're looking at a, top safety type player, maybe they could go that far. But Forbes' threat to take it to the house every single time. Who knows if he ends up punt returning or doing something like that as well. Saints coming over. Here we go. So we got a new look with Derek Carr. What do I want for Derek Carr on this board? I mean, I could see Anton Harrison. I could see Darnell Washington getting here. And you know what? I think I actually want this because Taysom Hill is going to be in that flex spot. Let me just pull up chart real quick.
I wanted to mention earlier, so I was looking over the Falcons, all the moves the Falcons made, because they really spent money this offseason, right? They bolstered, re-signed their offensive lineman, but they brought in, like I said, Calais Campbell. And so there was one player that I thought was really interesting, and that's talking about the new defensive coordinator for the Falcons came over from the Saints and brought a couple of guys with him, including the nose tackle. And then this guy, I want to say Caden Ellis. Caden Ellis, right? So looking at him, he's rated 70 overall in Madden, and yet they signed him to a 3-year, like $25 million contract early in free agency. So I looked into it, and the guy had he's kind of like Nolan Smith. He's, we're talking about 235 pounds. Is he a pass rusher? Is he not? But he had something like 7 sacks in the last 6 weeks of the season last year for the Saints. So he's a player I think that can do a lot of the things that we talked about with Nolan Smith. He's a player that could play off the ball, play in coverage, has the traits to be a pass rusher. So Nolan Smith could be a pick here because they just lost that player. That's what I'm getting at.
No, absolutely, and I believe it. And looking at the depth, they picked Adam Troutman up last year. They've got Juwan Johnson. They're going to be good at tight end, even if they, and of course Taysom Hill still plays there. So yeah, Nolan Smith, a guy who over produced in the combine, we'll say, super athletic. Might just be one of those guys that you move around on the defense. Whether or not he's going to produce like Michael Parsons, which he didn't play at that speed, but like Brooks was saying earlier, this guy took on guys that had almost 100 pounds on him, and he was happy to do it, and he's still making hand moves and fighting with those guys. So also who knows what he looks like 2-3 years from now, bulking up when he's able to truly fit into an NFL body, or whether or not he keeps that spot and just becomes an explosive all around the field type player. So I'm actually slam dunking Nolan Smith. I love this guy. I think it'll be a good spot. All right, Kevin, the Roseman. Are you here?
Yeah, a little disappointed that Nolan Smith didn't make it down to 30 there. Really thought that he was going to fall, but following the principal here in Philadelphia, we're going back to the trenches, but we're going on the defensive side of the ball. Another name to watch, definitely in the later round. I think it might be a little bit high right now. Is I know Howie Roseman loves an edge out of Northwestern, added by Warre, but I don't think that they'll take him here at 30. I think that we're just going to see how the board falls, and we're just going to go with Will McDonald here. We had a lot of guys put up, high number sacks last year, and Javon Hargrave departed. Brandon Graham was brought back on a 1-year deal. Fletcher Cox is, back on another 1-year deal, I believe. So the defensive line is aging, but we replenished that with with McDonald here.
Love it. And I mean, that pass rush was ferocious last year. Just every game rotating as many guys as they did. They brought in Ndamukong Suh to get that extra depth, and just every single guy, it felt like, on that line could produce sacks. So getting another rusher seems like a great spot, especially if they're thinking that they're getting older.
Absolutely.
All right. Round us out, Padraic. We got the Chiefs at 31. We talked about Hendon Hooker being around. If you want, we can take
yep,
all
slam dunk. They went Hendon Hooker.
No, any trades like that seems like the most obvious spot for teams to trade in. Is there a player that you're slam dunking as the Chiefs, or are you looking for these trade offers? Maybe like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think with the tackle from Alabama on the board, Anton Harrison, so they just traded swapped, I should say, Orlando Brown Jr. for Juwan Taylor. Juwan Taylor has been, an all right starter. Is he he's talk about like Andre Dillard, somebody that comes in and can be a player. But they lost their starting right tackle, who was I think subpar. So the Chiefs are really solid in the interior offensive line. They have that question with Juwan Taylor. How good is he actually? So I think tackle is definitely the pick here. If there's a tackle that lines up with value on the board, I do not think the Chiefs will think twice.
Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It helps the channel out a lot. I'll catch you guys next time. Keep it surreal. Peace.